Welcome back to my kitchen. I'm Tina from livingdeliciousnutrish.com, and today we're doing recipe 4 of the 5 Greek-inspired chicken dishes, and you can get the free download when you sign up for my newsletter, which is livingdeliciousnutrish.com on my website. Just sign up for the newsletter and you get the download for free. So first thing we're gonna do is start here with my trusty food processor, and I'm gonna show you this marinade. It's a little unique because a long time ago I used to do Greek yogurt marinade because I just love how the acid makes the meat so nice and tender. But now I'm using a dairy-free yogurt. It's a Greek style, but almond milk yogurt, unsweetened, no flavor. That's just gonna go into the food processor. But first, this is the really fun thing about this recipe. I just have some rough chopped onions here, and I'm going to add them to my food processor. And there's a little garlic in here too. And we're gonna mince this down to almost a liquid. We're gonna liquefy these onions, and that just really adds so much flavor to the marinade without it being chunky and just, little areas getting the, sorry, I wanted to set this up over here. Okay, all good. So I'm just gonna pulse this real quick. After I pulse it a couple of times, I'm just gonna let it go because I just want this to be really fine chopped, as I said, almost liquid. It reminds me of the sweet onions you put on your hot dog at the ballpark that are just minced up so finely. And of course the garlic is in there too. And then next, I'm gonna add some mint leaves. Just have some mint leaves here. From my yard. You can use dried mint. If you use fresh, go with half of the quantity. This calls for 2 teaspoons of dried, so you would basically use a teaspoon of fresh, but this is, about 5 leaves. And we'll get that going. And I always like to go with the most dense or hardest food item in the food processor to the most liquid. And the reason I do that is because if you had something really liquid in here and then you started adding harder things, you're never gonna get them to a nice smooth mass, and that's what you want. So I'm pulsing it again, just getting these leaves to break down because that mint flavor is just so delicious and so Greek. And that looks really good. I'll show you how that is right now. It's kind of making the onions have a little bit of a green cast. Looks like snow, okay? And it smells so good. The fresh mint is really the way to go if you have it. And now I'm just gonna add the yogurt. And this is one of those 5-ounce containers of the Greek almond milk yogurt. If you can tolerate dairy, go ahead and use regular Greek yogurt, but I'm trying to keep this paleo, and it's a totally Whole30 compatible recipe as well. So now I'm just gonna add that in with a quick whir. You can see it's just making like a nice liquidy mass. And last but not least, some lemon zest. I'm just using a half a lemon. Let's unwrap this guy real quick. I'm gonna zest the outside first. And the zest is just the yellow part. You don't want to go down to the white because the white is what makes it bitter. And you can see I've taken all that zest off. He's nice and pale now. And I'm just using this zester. Not an expensive piece of equipment at all. I'm gonna leave him out because we're gonna use it again. And my lemon squeezer just to get the juice in. A half a lemon's gonna be about a tablespoon. And we're gonna give it one more whir. Perfect. Just gonna put this into a bowl, and then I'll show you how how we cut up the chicken for the kebabs, because it's really a pretty basic technique, but I think you like to see. So you can see this is pretty liquidy. Just gonna pour it into the bowl, and I wanna show you this trick that I learned a long time ago. To keep the blade from falling out of the bottom of the food processor, put your finger in that hole. That's where this stem comes up on the unit. So if you put your finger in there, you can turn it upside down. You have a good grip on it. It won't fall out and splash everywhere, which I have learned the hard way not to do. I'm getting all of that out of there. And you'll want to twist the blade around and get that out too. And that's that. I'm going to use the blade in a second to show you how to make the arugula pesto. I'm just going to rinse it off real quick. And I have another bowl that we'll use for that. But in the meantime, we're going to get this yogurt marinade going, because the chicken needs to marinate for about 4 or 5 hours. I like to do it overnight. And again, all of these recipes are very simple because they're just chicken breasts. I have 2 organic chicken breasts here. And I'm going to work with the bottom, or rather where the skin came off, it's nice and shiny. I'm going to work with the opposite side. And the reason I like to do that is because you can see more of the structure of the meat from where it came off the bone. First, I'm just going to trim off this little bit of fat. Nobody wants to eat that, especially when the pieces are really small. And then I'm going through this. I just want to move everything out of the way so you can see how I'm doing it. I'm going to go through this right where the meat is kind of divided from where it was attached to the ribs. So I'm just going to cut that right in half, kind of half. And now I have this pointy end and this very fat end. So I'm going to start with the fat end a little bit of an angle at about the 1-inch mark. So I have a nice 1-inch piece. And then the next piece will be about the same. And then this last piece, since it's pointier, it's going to look bigger, but weight-wise, it's about the same. You want these to be as close as possible to the same size so that they cook evenly. Now this big guy is easy to do. Just take that tail off, cut this again down the middle, and into 3 or 4 chunks depending on the size of the meat. And since this one kind of gets a little pointier, I'm going to make that narrower end a little bigger than the middle piece. And that's all there is to that. So I'll toss these around. You can put these into a Ziploc bag. Just go ahead and cover the bowl and leave them overnight in the refrigerator, and they will work their magic on their own. So I'm going to set this aside, and next we're going to work on this arugula pesto. I'll rinse this lid off real quick. I don't really worry about any kind of cross-contamination when I'm doing all vegetables. It's not really a problem. But if I had started with the chicken or something that had the potential to have some bacteria, then I would not. So again, we're going to go with the most dense to the least dense, and what I have here are about 3 cloves of chopped garlic, just rough chopped because we're going to let the machine do all the work, and a 1/4 cup of walnuts. I love this pesto because it's just as flavorful as a traditional pesto that has basil and walnuts. It's got that nice bright kick from the arugula, but we're using walnuts, which are just so heart healthy and packed with nutrients, and no cheese. So it's dairy free and it's just as delicious. No one will ever miss the cheese. And I know that because I served this last night for some friends and they didn't know the difference and they loved it. So we're just gonna pulse that. It's gonna be really loud. But when the sound starts to get a little more level, you know that the walnuts are probably where you want them. you want them to a fine grind, but you don't want the oil to start coming out. So that's gonna look like this. And this is the garlic and the walnuts together. Just gonna scrape that down. The other thing I like to tell people when they're using their food processor is if you're using a rubber or silicone spatula, as I am here, to just be careful that you don't catch the soft material in the point of the blade, because it will catch. Now I'm gonna get this cutting board out of the way since we had chicken on it. And next I'm gonna add 2 cups of arugula packed. This is fresh arugula, fresh organic arugula. I'm just going straight in. And we will mix that until it's a nice smooth consistency, because this is just gonna render out like a nice thick sauce. And pulsing really helps even out the chopping process. So I've got this to a nice mince now. I'll show you what that looks like. But it's still kind of dry because we haven't added the oil or the lemon yet. And I'll scrape that down one more time. Make sure all that garlic and walnut mixture gets incorporated in. And now some lemon zest and juice. Of course, same procedure, but this time I'm using the whole lemon because the arugula is very peppery and I like that bite, but I also like to balance it out a little bit with the sweetness of the lemon. So you get that nice bright tang and a little bit of natural sweetness. And now I've taken all the zest off and I'll just slice this guy in half. Let me talk to you about my compost. I always, with my garden, have a little pot like this. It has a filter in the top, and I can throw things like these used lemons, eggshells, any other, kitchen scraps, uncooked vegetable kind of thing into my composter, and then I have a compost pile on the side of the yard, and I use it to fertilize my garden. And it really helps reduce the waste in the yard and in your trash. Someone here on social media earlier today was commenting about how hot it's getting in Florida and the issues they're having with their trash. And I said, get a composter. So the other half of this lemon is going in now. So that's a whole lemon, about 1/4 cup of lemon juice. So this is a really easy recipe to remember. It's almost 1/4 cup of everything. And then with the machine on, this is the last step. With the machine on, I'm gonna drizzle in 1/4 cup of olive oil. So I'm going straight to on, and the lemon is starting to mix, and then you can see I'm just gonna go very slowly with a very thin stream that helps incorporate the oil into it very gently. And that looks perfect. I'm gonna add a little salt and pepper. You may have noticed I didn't add any salt and pepper to the marinade of the chicken. That's because I'll season it right before I skewer it. And I like to do that because I think the salt tends to dry out the meat even with that marinade, and I don't want it to oxidize. So I'm just going to scrape that down one more time and give it one last whirl. And that is it for the pesto. Have a little bowl here. I like to serve it in a little bowl like this and just pass it around and let everyone drizzle it on. If you like to serve this with a grain-free tortilla or some pita bread that's grain-free, you can do that and make the shish kebabs like a sandwich. But I just love all of these flavors. It's bright, it's springy. If you're getting to a point where you live where you're starting to grill a little bit, this is just, and it's great to do for a big crowd. So there's our pesto. You can see it's nice and bright green and has a nice smooth consistency, and it smells amazing. So what I've already done is skewer the meat. I use some wooden skewers just like this. Wooden skewers need to be soaked for about a half an hour in some water. I just lay them into a big pan so that they don't burn when you put them on the grill. The other thing that you can do is just use a grill pan, as I did here in the house. I just used a grill pan. And I got these guys going. And they're ready. So after the meat is already marinated, just go ahead and skewer it. And after you skewer it, you might want to just dab them off a little bit so any excess marinade doesn't, one, drip into the grill and create any kind of flame, which could burn the chicken, or also keep it from steaming, because we don't like when it steams. We want to get that nice sear on the outside and lock all the juices in. So I'll show you how I plate this up. And I also served it with an excellent orzo pasta. I've found jovial orzo pasta to be an excellent option for those of us that can't eat grain because it's made from cassava flour. I'm just gonna put a little smear of the pesto here and just put these skewers on top. Or what you could do is simply take all the meat off of the skewers and serve it on a large platter with some nice greens, and serve this out, the sauce as I said, on the side. And you can pass around the pesto and have a delicious drizzle for on top. So that's all there is to this recipe, except for the marinade. It's really done quickly. And even if you just have about 4 hours, that's really can be sufficient amount for the marinade as well. So thanks again for everyone who joined me. I appreciate you coming back to see me every week. Next week will be the last chicken recipe, and it will be featuring that orzo pasta as well. So be sure to go online again. Go to my website, livingdeliciousnutrish.com, to check out the free download when you sign up for my newsletter. And I'll see you here next week, okay? Thanks for joining me. It's always fun to have you here in my kitchen. Have a great week.